I repeat, it's not the end of the world. The season goes on and there is still hope. There's still life. And depending on your perspective on this game, possibly optimism. Welcome into the voice of college football, Buckeyes, talking Ohio State football and man, that record looks lousy. 5-1 football team. All right. We got Tony Gerdeman here, of course, from BuckeyeHuddle.com and the Buckeye Weekly podcast that you need to lock in on every day. The Buckeye Weekly podcast every day. And then Steve Hellwagon, of course, Bucknuts 247 Sports. Guys, how we doing?
Doing great.
You guys both survived the excursion. You made it back. I'll hit you with this, Steve. Let's start with this. Did the scene, did the vibe, the excitement, all of that live up to the hype of a game at Autzen Stadium?
Oh, no doubt. And I want to point out, I'm still excursioning. I left Oregon and came to Phoenix for a week since there's no game this week and no basketball. And before we start one 50 or 60-hour week after another through April the 15th, I figured I needed to take a little mental health break, which given the circumstances from Saturday, just coming to grips with things at this point. But yes, the scene was amazing. One of the best places to watch a game in all of college football is the Autzen Stadium there in Oregon. The view that we had from the South Press Box looking north into the mountains and everything off in the distance kind of remind you a little bit of Penn State and the Rose Bowl a little bit, but just fabulous. And, if you didn't care who won, that was one hell of a game. And if you liked Oregon, obviously you thought it was one of the greatest games ever played probably, but Oregon announced its presence in the Big Ten Conference for sure, taking down one of the two big standard bearers, no doubt, in just their third game in the conference. So, yeah, it was a spectacle. They do it right. It was very loud. They were trying to set a Autzen Stadium decibel record. I don't know that they ever got there, but boy, oh boy, did they died trying. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was a standard bearer just because they won the first college football game and national championship. Okay. Sorry, Tony.
I mean, it's not much more ridiculous than the stuff that Michigan claims from way back in the day, if we're being honest. But before we get to that whole thing, I thought it was the most sustained noise I've ever experienced at a game. Like, the game was never – it was always a one-score game, and the crowd was always in it. Even the Ohio State fans that were there, and there were quite a few Ohio State fans there trying to get loud on third downs, and it was an awesome environment. Press box was open, so like you could experience and hear all of it. You could go outside if you wanted, and you could go up on top of the press box and really get outside. Just fantastic venue in terms of the experience. That's what college football is all about. Good time. I would recommend it. Just be prepared for a lot of travel and any possible delays, but it's something I think you should experience it once. And I'm looking forward to being out at Washington next year and knocking these two out. And can't say enough for the game itself, the environment, the stakes, and even as we're talking about the stakes, what has actually changed? Nothing has really changed. But for all the people that have said the 12-team playoff is going to kill the regular season, look at the regular season we've had. Look at the emotions that everybody has had during this regular season. Did you see any type of reaction as the game is going on that people were like, it doesn't matter? No, everybody still as completely fired up as they've ever been. Just look at all the death threats on social media from Buckeye fans.
Speaking about Washington's very nice. I was there in 2007, I believe, with Ohio State, played at Washington and won in the Tressel era. It was Tressel versus Tyrone Willingham. And that was, a good game for Ohio State. It is a nice setting up there, but I do think Oregon gets the edge in terms of passion. Washington, maybe if they have one of their better teams, they'll be, similar. But, it's, again, very impressed with everything I saw out there and what it means. I mean, you can tell they are really into football at Oregon, and it was a great setting for a game. This game, as we kind of dive into it, to me, reminded me of several games where they've come up one or two plays short, like the Clemson game in 2019, the Georgia game in 2022 in the playoff, and the Michigan game last year where they had the ball at the 25-yard line, going in needing a touchdown, and obviously, I think he threw an interception there or whatever to kind of end the game. So, those three kind of stand out in my mind, and it also brought up the Michigan game from 2022, where Michigan pulled off something like 5 plays of 30 yards or longer, whatever that stat was. Well, I think this was probably as bad or worse, 6 plays of 20 yards or longer, and several of them 50 yards or longer, and nothing short of ridiculous showing by the Ohio State defense, a defense that you thought had clicked into place and obviously has not. And, you get into the big games. I think the offense is just fine. They put up almost 500 yards and 31 points. That should win you 99% of the games that you play, but didn't win them this one, obviously. And, that's not to say they weren't without mistakes. I mean, a fumbled snap, a slip for a sack on the last drive that cost them 30 valuable seconds. The indecision on the last play, certainly all those things. They fumbled the ball on their own 20-yard line and gave them 6 points. So there were a lot of issues, I think, on the offensive side, but you're going to have that in a, evenly matched game. The offense versus the Oregon offense versus the Ohio State defense was not an evenly matched game. And I don't think Ohio State gave Oregon the credit it deserved for the quality of the wide receivers that Oregon has. Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden, at least before he was ejected, and the tight end Terrence Ferguson. As Coop used to say back in the day, for any of you who listen, we tried to tell you, that those 4 guys were studs, and the quarterback is obviously a stud, Dylan Gabriel. And so, man, we can delve into a lot of the issues on that side of the ball as we go along, but those were the remembrances I had, those 3 tough losses, and certainly the one against Michigan, which wasn't a tough loss. It was a blowout with all those big plays, but, the offense kept Ohio State in this one at least.
Yeah, 8 plays of 25 yards or more. Ohio State hadn't given up a 30-yard pass all season, and they gave up 4 in this one. Steve, you said the defense hadn't clicked into place. I would argue that they were clicked into place, and that place was the first down marker. And then when the receivers ran past them, they had to unclick and run with them. They weren't expecting Dylan Gabriel to 1, throw deep, and 2, throw deep accurately, because he's not done it, at least on the right side of the field, all season long. And they went after it, and they connected very, very well, as well as he's done since maybe last year and maybe ever, frankly, because he's, watching him, I think it was maybe Boise State watching him earlier this season throwing deep, and he had open receivers and it wasn't connecting. And this one, he had open receivers because the defenders were fixated on the sticks on the first down line. And even the first deep pass that Denzel Burke gave up, if you watch that, Caleb Downs is sitting at the marker, and Tez Johnson gives him one move and runs right by him, and he could have been the guy that was open. There's another play where I think maybe later in the game, it's a 3rd down, maybe they failed, and they end up missing a field goal. There's an open receiver running right down the sideline, or right down the field, and Dylan Gabriel threw to the wrong guy. I think Ohio State, the next time they play Oregon, and I do believe there will be a next time, they're going to have to respect the deep shots, which then maybe opens up all of the short stuff and the dinks and the dunks. But yeah, they were so fixated. To me, it just seemed like a defensive game plan that was like, we're going to force them to throw deep, and if they connect, so be it. They haven't been able to do it much this year. And they did it, and Ohio State still almost came away with the win. But there are versions of this game where Oregon could have won by 17. If that Will Kazmarek catch gets correctly called as an interception, if Oregon doesn't get stopped at the goal line, if Oregon makes their field goal, like There are versions of this game that Oregon wins outright and handily, and there are also versions of this game where Ohio State wins, 5 times, 6 times out of 10. So I'm looking forward to the rematch. The crowd was absolutely a factor. I need to go back and look at how many of those false starts were on drives that did not end up in points, because none of that helped. And I think there are 4 or 5 false starts by all different kinds of people. And so, Ohio State walks out with a loss. Fantastic game, a classic. But the bigger loss is Josh Simmons.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. That one hurts because he had played great football at left tackle, I thought, all season long. And I thought the second half of last season, once he got his feet under him, he was pretty good. So they put Zen Mahalski in for him, and it will remain to be seen whether that is the final verdict on that. I've seen some variations where they put Tegra Shabola out there at left tackle and let Austin Seerveld replace him at right guard and try and attack it that way. I'm not sure if Shabola is ready for that or not, and I'm sure they're trying out all combinations. Luke Montgomery is also a possibility in some regard for this, if they want to use him as a tackle or as a guard to fill the spots. But they've at least got some depth and some guys who have played. So I am, optimistic that they're going to be able to pull it together. The running in the second half without Josh Simmons, I can't say that one correlated to the other. Oregon maybe made some better adjustments, but they held Ohio State to like 20 yards rushing in the second half on like 15 attempts, something like that, whatever those exact numbers were, but it wasn't good. And that can't go on. Obviously, in the big games, you got to be able to run for 150 to 200 yards in the big games. And they weren't able to do that, at least prorated what they had in the second half. They were behind the down and distance marker quite a bit, and eventually they just gave up on it and threw on every down. We can question what they ended up doing on first down at the 28-yard line after the Abuka play, but it's kind of like what happened in the Georgia game 2 years ago, where they got quasi close to field goal range but didn't advance it any farther. And, again, it was a little bit wonky because you only had one timeout and you were down to like, I don't know exactly, 20, 25 seconds. And you really, you probably did need another 5 yards to feel really, really good about it. And, there's some people that said, well, they should have run the ball there. Well, if it goes down in bounds, then you have to use your last timeout. And at that point, pretty much have to kick your field goal at that point. I think a pass, then a run, and a timeout may have been the best way to approach it. You didn't need, obviously, the pass interference penalty. You didn't need that. That was, and we can debate that one until the cows come home. To me, I think when you shove off and catch a ball right in front of the official, that's probably going to get called 8 times out of 10. So I would say that was an 80%er that you did it in front of God and everybody. It wasn't like, you just kind of elbowed off of him and turned around and caught the ball. No, you took 2 hands, and people are like, oh, the DB initiated the contact. Well, the DB's got to do something to defend himself. Jeremiah Smith is running right at him. So, it's kind of like he headhunted the DB to push off on him. So, figure we got to get this 8 or 10 yards, and by God, I got to do whatever I got to do to get it. And freshman mistake, rookie mistake, ultimately. And that's you take the good with the bad. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so much we could talk about this game and every little turning point that, I think this is like the Clemson game in 2019 where people say, oh, the interception at the end or the interception that was called back, whatever, or the fumble recovery, whatever that was, a Sean Wade play, whatever all this was. There were probably 10 or 12 different turning point plays in this game that really cost them You could say that he should have started chasing the two earlier. They scored a touchdown in the second quarter and kicked the extra point to make it a 6-point game. Do you maybe go for two there to get it out to a full 7? In the third quarter, you scored another touchdown, kicked the extra point, and got it to 6 again. Do you maybe go for two there to get it out to a full 7? And, of course, the score changes everything that everybody does from that moment of the game on. But, man, Oregon pulled this one out. That's about all you can say about it.
Let me say this about the pass interference. So I would agree. It was pass interference. There's no question about that. I don't think. Whether I heard people claiming he didn't fully extend his arms. What I always find, regardless of my rooting interest, unfortunate is when there is a call made that has to be called, but the infraction, the penalty was unnecessary. Jeremiah Smith, by shoving that defender, created just immense open space. Jeremiah Smith just running at him, shielding him, then breaking off that route is still wide open and catches that football, and they've got the ball at the 18-yard line. He just has that much of an advantage in that situation because of just any wide receiver having that advantage on that route against the DB. But then you take into consideration his size advantage and strength advantage over that DB, and he just runs that route and he's open and they complete the ball anyway.
And I'm also wondering if you go back and watch every receiver in this game at the top of their route, is that the only time a receiver is pushed off in this game? I'm going to assume no. And what was it? The play before that when Jeremiah Smith is being held and grabbed, running down the field for a deep pass down inside the 5 or whatever. But I also don't think it helped Jeremiah Smith that this happened on the Oregon sideline where all of the coaches are right there yelling and all of the players are yelling. I'm with you. Like, you watch it and it sure looks like a shove off. It's just, that must have been the only time that happened in the game since it was called in, but I doubt that. There's a bunch to talk about. I was just going through one of the comments that had me wanting to bring something else up, but we'll eventually get to it. I just think the timing of that, clearly they didn't want to throw a penalty on the defensive pass interference right before that, and then that it's just devastating 15-yard penalty when you're already in field goal range, and then that creates all of the what ifs. You should have done this, you should have done that. I don't think they told Jeremiah Smith, okay, go interfere and cost us 15 yards, and then we'll deal with it then.
The long term issue is getting back to Steve's original point, and that's the defense. So, these situations with Will Howard not getting down in time and Jeremiah Smith pushing off, those can be managed, I would hope, going forward. But if you want to take an optimistic look, I'm going to take this look at it until I see Ohio State play another lousy game on defense like this. And they're not going to play another Oregon in the regular season. Penn State's going to present different, less challenges that if we would have said at any point during the offseason, anyone that understands college football and follows these teams, okay, hardly anyone gets predicted to go 12-0. So your elite teams in the nation go 11-1. Ohio State's in that category. 98% of the people out there thought Ohio State was going to go 11-1. Okay, what's the highest probability loss? Myself and everybody else generally said the Oregon game on the road. So if you would have said back in May, Ohio State loses at Oregon 32-31, and they've got the ball in field goal range at the end of the game, and they lose the game on a offensive pass interference call, would people not have said, okay, yeah, that's going to be their loss, and they're going to go 11-1?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to look at it, that it was understandable, at least, that the way that it came down. Did they beat themselves? Certainly. And is there some debate which team's the better team? Maybe. Oregon played a really good game, though. I think you have to tip your cap to them. You know, their defense got just enough stops in this game, that one notwithstanding, to keep their team in the game as well. They made Ohio State pretty much earn everything that they got. You know, whereas Oregon hit all those big plays, and so, you know, I don't know. I'll just say I think if these two teams are matched up again on a neutral field in Indianapolis, where 60% of the people, 70% of the people are rooting for Ohio State, then I think, you know, it's gonna probably go the other direction. I think Ohio State's defense can't play that bad 2 times in a row against Oregon. I don't think there's a team on the schedule the rest of the way, Penn State potentially, that is going to put up 30 points against this team. Penn State, you know, listening to them against USC, it was a struggle for the longest time for them, and then it finally broke through in the second half and put some drives together. But you know, that's, of course, you can't really overlook Nebraska. Here's Nebraska has got, you know, a big game this Saturday against Indiana. What is it, 5-1 versus 6-0? That's who in their right mind would have thought that was a possibility?
Big noon,
big noon, Big Kev Saturday, and so you know, Nebraska. Let's say they win that one, take down an undefeated team in Indiana, and now they're coming to Columbus with all the momentum in the world, and you know, we'll see what. If Ohio State has a hangover from this, you know, to me, that would be terrible to see if they come out in the next game and they don't have their heads right after a 2-week layoff. They've got to go back to the drawing board Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week and really get some good work days in, and then start back in on Sunday with their regular work week. And you know, the coaches are out on the road recruiting. They'll be at high school games this Friday, obviously, recruiting some of the top prospects in the country. And, you know, they've got to come up with some answers. I think offensively, you're on the right track. Got to get that left tackle situation figured out. Got to be able to run the ball when you want to run the ball. But I think Will Howard came through this one generally. Yeah, man, he played great, but he also had those 3 mistakes that you're just kind of like, you know, just doggone it, you know, fumbled a snap on 3rd and 3 from the, you know, when they just gotten off their goal line, and they had to punt the ball away. And when they punted it away, Oregon took over on its own 40 and hit, you know, 2-3 plays, and they're in the end zone. That was the one with the 27-yard run by the quarterback to start the 4th quarter, where they took the lead. And you know, it just you can't have that. I mean, it was a perfect snap from Seth McLaughlin, and you can't have that. He slipped and fell down on the first play of the final drive. Yes, he had 2 passes after that and got the first down and got him moving, but that was 30 seconds that they wasted, you know, to re-pick up that 20 yards that they had to get. So, you know, it was I'd give him, you know, I wanted to give him an A-, or, you know, but now I'm thinking about it, probably a B+ for him. But at least we know that he's capable, and that's, you know, he's capable of making the plays. Agbuka, man, he had a great game. Jeremiah Smith had a great game up until that last play. So, yeah, and G. Scott had one of his best games at tight end, had a big catch. So there's plenty to like out of this. It's just offense has got to get those couple things, the line and the running game figured out, and the defense, it's back to the drawing board for me. I'm trying not to swear. Some of the things that they called, I mean, in the videos that are out there on the internet, where they bring 2 linebackers, drop the 4 defensive linemen into coverage, and yet the wide receiver runs unfettered right around Denzel Burke for like a 40-yard touchdown. That was a backbreaker. That just, you know, that can't happen. And God only knows what that call was. I have no clue. We're going to bring two guys, and you're going to have all day to throw it. So, two guys against a 5-man offensive line. Here we come.
So you're taking us where we need to go, Steve. And by the way, I've got other shows where I'm calling the guys saying, can you tone down the F word a little bit? So you're free, hey, we run a clean show here. So Steve, if you want to throw a few out there, I'm good with that. Don't worry about that.
Trying to restrain myself. I don't know.
So Tony Meek is hitting on
I don't want my blood pressure to go too high.
So Tony Meek we don't either. Tony Meek is hitting on something that I wanted to hit on because Steve, again, hit it right off the top. Secondary and pass rush. Those are the takeaways from this game, that these need to be fixed to some degree. There's too much talent out there. So this is something I see all day watching college football. Exotic blitzes. And do you get burned at times? You do get burned. But I see things where once they show the replay, it's like, wow, that was creative. This fooled this dude. This linebacker was athletic enough, and his D coordinator knew that he could drop that far, and boom, he's picking off Drew Aller got fooled a couple times into picks because DeAnton Lynn threw a blitz package at him that obviously fooled him, and he didn't expect somebody to be somewhere. It just doesn't seem like Jim Knowles has that in his repertoire.
Well, and some of the stuff Steve's talking about there, those kind of zone blitzes there is blitzing, but even the extra blitzing, they just don't get home. They're coming from too far away. Like you see a safety come screaming in, and it's like, well, that's never going to get there. He's going to get the ball out well before anybody gets there. And they did a good job of picking up the blitzing. I just think the blitzing is relatively ineffective in general this year for Ohio State, and needs to pick up in terms of the pass blitzing. Some of the run blitzing stuff has been good, but getting to the quarterback has been an issue. And from something that I was told, the defensive ends are basically being asked to do a very basic thing, at least against Oregon, and keep contain more often than not, even though they several times just tore past the quarterback, like well beyond the quarterback, while Gabriel was able to step up. I expected more from the interior of the defensive line in terms of the pass rush and controlling the line of scrimmage, and that didn't happen. And not to I do want to go back to the offensive line. Ohio State, outside of the two rushes back to back for 70 yards for Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins averaged 2 yards a carry for the entire game. The second half, Ohio State rushed for 19 yards on 12 attempts. Now they only had 2 possessions in the fourth quarter, and they only had 4 possessions in the second half total. But they have to be able to run the ball better. I was surprised that they weren't able to run the ball. I think that is a concerning thing. And then with the offensive line, and I said this after the game, I've said this on Twitter or somewhere on our message board, but when Simmons was down, Luke Montgomery immediately went into the huddle, and he stood at left guard, and Donovan Jackson stood at left tackle. And then before the play, Zen Michalski went in, and Luke Montgomery came out. Donovan Jackson went back to left guard. Michalski stood at left tackle. So I'm wondering if they're going to give Donovan Jackson a look at tackle this next week or so. They're going to go with their 5 best, and right now, I think that means Austin Searveld's in the lineup somewhere. So you've just got to figure out where those guys all fit, and they've got options. They also have Carson Hinsman, who could maybe fit in somewhere on the interior, but you're still going to be kicking it out.
Buckeye.
Yeah, you're still going to be kicking out a guard to tackle or somewhere in this.
You got options.
And Tegra Shabola is okay. He did come back into the game.
Yes,
he played. He's going to have time off to get fully ready. So I expect he'll be okay.
Folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We talk Buckeyes with these two each and every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Please like and subscribe. Please check out Tony's work at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also, the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. And, of course, Steve's at Bucknuts on 247 Sports. We also have an edition here at the Voice of College Football where every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, starting this past Monday, we had our guy JR taking your calls. So JR, you're a brave soul taking calls from these folks. So how you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing good. We were talking before, me and Zach, he's the other guy that's on there with me. We were talking before, this was a kind of interesting one to start it with the Oregon game and everything, and they weren't too bad. So a lot of measured fans and stuff like that. So we did well for the first time.
So
Try Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday night wouldn't have been pretty.
So do you tend to run the glass half full or the glass half empty yourself, especially concerning this performance?
Yeah, I think they need to keep Ryan Day. I don't. For me, it's like you have the stuff that's the issues, but he's a young coach, and you hope that he can correct it. You look at what Kirby went through in his first 6 seasons, and that gives me hope that Ryan just keeps improving, keeps getting better, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I don't. If somebody's upset with Ryan Day, I don't argue with him too much about it. I just say, let's hope he improves.
All right. Everyone, you get the Ohio State Call-In Show Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time with JR and with Zach. It's a good time. They got off to a great start this past Monday. JR, appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully we can get you a good crowd in here every Monday to talk Buckeyes with you.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Yeah, that's a tough duty to start out your first one after a loss like that. We did our post-game show with Dave Biddle on our site and Patrick Murphy, and it was one of the most well-watched shows we've ever done, which at 11:30 Eastern Time to 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, you would think most people are going to bed, but people wanted to talk about it and wanted to find out, what was being said about it. And man, it there is a lot of passion out there for it, and I think that I guess you just have to keep the faith in this moment and just understand that the season, as you said, is not over. The world has not come to an end. The sun did come up on Sunday, and we've lived through a lot of these over the years. I mean, I've been doing this full time since the 90s, and there were a lot of them in the 90s, and maybe not quite as many of them in the 2000s with Jim Tressel, but there were a few. And then obviously on up through the 2010s with Urban, such a great run that he had. But, I think you look at it and you say, with Ryan Day, you're in the hunt. And with another coach, is that going to be the case? You would think if you have the money to pay players to play this game at the level that Ohio State purports to have the money to be able to pay players to play this game, then you will be in the hunt. But there's a lot more to it than that. This game illustrated that it's more than just talent. You've got to be able to do the little things well. And there were so many quirky things that happened in this game. A guy from Oregon got ejected for spitting on Davison Igbinosun for some reason. You had it wasn't an onside kick. It happened with 1:17 remaining in the first half. Or no, when did it happen? No, it happened after it happened in the second quarter, early second quarter. It was 14-12. Ohio State still had the lead, but Hancock had been penalized for a face mask on the touchdown play to Stewart, a 10-yard touchdown pass. So the kickoff goes to the 50-yard line. Well, I mean, you could onside kick there, but then you're giving the ball at the 40-yard line if you don't recover it. The smart play there is to squib the kick into the field of play where it will not go into the end zone, and they have to pick it up and they have to return it. And the hope is that you will be able to pin them back at the 15-yard line. If you pop it up in the air, they're going to fair catch it, and it'll go to the 25. So I think that you look at it that they tried to get a returnable ball that Ohio State had to pick up and make it hem 'em in. And instead, they got the bounce of all bounces. It hit off C.J. Hicks, the up back. And again, the Ohio State special teams are, not best in class, and gets recovered, and so be it. But that that didn't help the cause. They got a field goal out of that. So that was only 3 points. Oh, but you lost by 1. So, every little play in this game, kind of portended this outcome, and it was didn't turn out good for the Scarlet and Gray or the team in all white. So
imagine if Lathan Ransom had taken that 2-pointer back.
Yeah,
on his interception. And even now, college football looking to change the rule on what happened with the 12-man penalty and the time running off the clock. So
they found a loophole, no doubt about it. And Tony, I'm old enough to remember in 1986, Ohio State played Alabama in the kickoff classic, and Ohio State had a guy by the name of Chris Carter, and they're down. I think the final score of the game was 16-10. So they're at Giant Stadium, and they're driving. They're going down the field. They're at the 30. They throw a pass up for Chris Carter, pass interference. 15, 20, 30 seconds left. I don't remember the exact thing, but Alabama decided this guy is not going to beat us. They, grabbed him, held him, deliberately pass interfered to
Hack-a-Shack.
Yeah, but what they were doing, they were dwindling the clock. And eventually the time ran out on one of those pass interference penalties. I think they had 2 or 3 in succession. And finally there was an untimed down, and that's what Alabama was counting on, was finally getting the stop on the untimed down, and that's how they held on to win the game. They bled the clock. What the rule should be is the aggrieved party, either offense or defense, should have the right in the final 2 minutes, final minute, however you want to do it, to have the clock go back to what it was at the start of the play, because you can't foul, in my opinion, to win the game. And that's what Oregon did, in a sense, to help win the game. That runs counter to sportsmanship, fair play, however you want to put it. Just giving the opponent a fair shot to win the game. You ran the clock out by fouling. And those 4 seconds proved to be very critical. Obviously, on the next play, I'm not sure what McCord was thinking, but I knew
Howard.
Oh, McCord.
McCord was winning his game. Meanwhile,
oh God,
he was beating
I'm not
that
sure what Howard was thinking,
great
because
NC State team. Yes,
it felt like they brought a rush or a blitz that got in his face and really kind of screwed up. They said they had 3 receivers around the boundary, like they were trying to get it out there to where they could get out of bounds, but they needed 10 yards because of the pass interference penalty. He got 10 yards. He slid at the 26-yard line, but he slid a second too late. And there's screenshots that he's going into his slide with 1 second left. Boy, oh boy, they reviewed the film at Notre Dame last year on that touchdown for 10 minutes and put a second back on the clock, but somehow miraculously, that didn't get reviewed at Oregon. I don't know, but whatever. Again, we're picking nits, but I think that that would be a great rule if they changed it. It's not sour grapes. Oregon won the game fair and square under the rules, the way the game was played, and just hope for a rematch. Oregon, to me, has got the inside track. Ohio State at this point, if they win out, and I think it's Illinois loses a game, then they're in. So I think since they don't play Illinois, if they win out, and that includes wins over Michigan, Nebraska, Indiana, and the previous win over Iowa, they would have the tiebreaker over everybody that they'd be tied with. And Illinois is just the one that they would need to slip up and lose a second Big Ten game to be free and clear. And they could still win a tiebreaker with Illinois based on records or whatever they're looking at. But I can't imagine Illinois is going to – the way they gave up a 24-point lead to Purdue last week, I can't imagine that Illinois is going to be the team that ends up with 1 loss in this league.
I don't see that loss happening this week either when they host Michigan. For the Michigan fans, I know they're going to be interested in coping here as well. When Oregon went to that 12-man defense, that allowed them to put a safety over top of Jeremiah Smith on the other side of the field. So Jabbar Muhammad could be more aggressive in his defense of Smith and break up the pass that left 6 seconds on the clock. But if you want to go back and look, you'll see that the ball actually hits the ground with 7 seconds on the clock. But who's counting? It's not like this is a game of seconds or not like anything. But I saw somebody say, why not just put 15 on the field, 15 defenders? I think at that point, maybe the refs should blow the whistle as just like what's going on. I had somebody ask me, like, why doesn't Ohio State call a timeout there? And then Oregon would be penalized. And I don't know that that's the rule because there's no play happening. So I don't know why Oregon would be flagged. And also, when things are happening that quickly, I don't know that there's communication to say, hey, there's 12 men on the field. Like the offense is not necessarily that in tune. But yeah, that 12th guy enabled safeties over top of everywhere, which allowed the corners to be more aggressive and ultimately lead to a pass being broken up that would have gained some yards.
Yeah, they got some real soul searching to do over there at the Ohio State College. I think when you're talking about running cornerbacks out there for whatever Oregon ran 60 plays and you don't sub much, this would have been an instance where, if you'd brought Jermaine Matthews along properly, he would have been in there for some of these plays, and maybe he doesn't get toasted like Hancock and Burke did over and over and over and over again. He
Big Benosin had a pass interference too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was equal opportunity. They've gotten nothing out of Caleb Downs in 6 games. I mean, this guy was supposed to be, the biggest thing in the world, and he hasn't made a game-changing play yet, in my opinion. Obviously they had 5 laughers before they played this one, but this would have been a nice game for him to come out with 10 or 11 tackles and a turnover of some sort. So, you just scratch your head and you wonder if that's because Knowles is playing him 20 yards off the ball or what's going on. But they got to pull their head from their behind over on that defensive side, and they got to get it figured out. There's too much talent, for them to play this poorly on defense. It defies logic and description to me. The tackling at times, the assignment football on the guy sitting next to me in the press box on that play. It was 3rd and 2 at the 27-yard line, 13 minutes to go in the game. And they had just run James up the middle for no gain. So it was 2nd and 2, James no gain. He said this would be a perfect time for the quarterback to pull it and run. And I'll be damned if that's exactly what happened. And he and I are like hitting one another as the guys are running gleefully down, weaving his way through the defense down the field. Like, I can't believe he just called that. And, he called it, and then what was it? The defensive end crashed, didn't have contain, poor tackling, poor angles. And, Dylan Gabriel, all 200 pounds of him, ran through the secondary and, looked like Barry freaking Sanders out there. But, what can you do? Those plays, we've seen it before. It happens all the time. So, what can you say?
Steve, what's going on at Bucknuts this week?
Well, I wish I could tell you. I'm divorced from those people this week. I'm not doing as little as I can do. As I said, basketball really fires up starting next week. There's actually an exhibition on Friday that I'm going to miss against Cincinnati. But, we'll be back into it full bore on Sunday, getting ready for the Nebraska game that week. And, this is the stretch run. You've got 6 games in 6 weeks to show either you are this good or you aren't. And, as our friend Luke Fickle once said, it's a valuation-friendly business. Either you did or you didn't. And, the dids are going to continue to play for the national championships, and the didn't, their season's going to be over, mid-December with a playoff loss or, whatever. So, Ohio State's got it all in front of them, and, they've got to be able to pick up the pieces from this, and no shortage of things on both sides of the ball to work on. Ryan Day on his radio show on Monday, I think basically confirmed that Simmons is done, and also said that they're going to pound the fundamentals pretty hard here these 3 days. So again, no reason not to show up at 3:00 every day.
Tony, what's on your work agenda this week for the bye
Well,
week?
rewatched the game last night, and we're gonna record a podcast today about what we learned from rewatching it. So you can find that at Buckeye Weekly at some point later this afternoon. And then yesterday, I wrote basically a column, an open letter to the small segment of Ohio State fans that hate the Buckeyes more than anybody else. So you can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com.
I'm sure that's entertaining. I know it is coming from Tony. So check that out, folks. Is this still the best team in the Big Ten? Even though they lost this game?
And they're still favored over Oregon in a neutral site. So, I mean, the odds makers think it is. I think Ohio State realizes the defense has seen they've been made to bleed their own blood, and they know where those wounds are, and they have an opportunity to fix that. But then also, are you going to be able to deal with whatever Oregon does next after fixing those wounds? Because I think Oregon is the real threat, and clearly for Ohio State. If they lose at Penn State, you know what? Then 2 losses to the number 3 teams in the nation on the road, I think you're still in the playoffs.
Steve,
Yeah.
I think you hit on a key point. Is that we did not get to see these bad defensive efforts in the past and a return trip against the same team. We didn't get to see a rematch. We should get to see a rematch here, and it'll be fascinating. Or we'll get to see them face, even if they don't get a rematch, if there's some kind of crazy tie-breaking system where, can you imagine Iowa or Illinois go to the Big Ten championship game with 1 loss in the conference? Fine. Then Ohio State's the 5 seed, in the playoff at 11-1. Great. And in the second round, they're playing Tennessee or somebody, and we'll get to see if the defense is
With the frozen
ready.
pipe.
But yeah, we didn't get to see the Georgia rematch or the Michigan rematch.
That's a great point. And I think that Ryan Day and anybody with any pride would like another shot at Oregon, no doubt. And there were good parts of this game. The first half for Ohio State, I mean, they had this thing. It was going really well. They went right down 10 plays, 75 yards, went right down the field and scored. And then they forced a punt. And, it just it kind of, went sideways after that. They Quinshon Judkins hadn't had a fumble in 2 years, and he loses one. 55 for Oregon wrestled the ball out from him, in the scrum, on the tackle, and comes out of there with it, and they give him the ball. So, a lot of twists and turns in this game, and a lot of ways that if they just made one more play here or one more play there, then they win this game. And so, I'm not going to get too wrapped up about it, but I can understand the frustration from all sides on this one.
And they suddenly have a pretty difficult schedule. There's no more Oregons on the schedule, but it's just that it's something close to what I looked at before the season with USC, where I warned all the USC fans in saying, I understand none of these teams look daunting to you. Minnesota, Rutgers, Nebraska, and USC is better than all of them individually, but just the week after week after week of pounding by Wisconsin and Minnesota, that's different than seeing Washington State and Colorado and teams like that. Will probably catch up, and it already has. They've only played 4 games in the Big Ten, and it's already caught up with them. So Ohio State, of course, is built differently than USC, but still Nebraska, Indiana, Penn State, of course, and a few others that, there's a threat there. If Ohio State's playing a C- game and they're on top of their game and a few, to quote Steve, wonky things happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. They still have to play Indiana, who's 6-0, Penn State, who's 6-0, Nebraska, who's 5-1, Michigan, who's 4-2. I mean, those four right there loom pretty big. Now Purdue down there at 1-5. That one doesn't stand out too bad. And the Northwestern game at Wrigley Field, they're 3-3. Those are the two games that don't scare you too much. But the other four, you're going to have to play good football to beat these teams, and can't just throw the helmet out there. And I don't know that any of them have the kind of offense to exploit deficiencies on defense. Maybe Indiana. They've put up 285 points in 6 games. That's, of course, they've played an extra game than some of the teams, but are actually 6 is about right now. So they've done a lot of good things so far. Indiana has. Just go back to the drawing board. That's all you can do. And, Ohio State's got to pick up the pieces and move on.
Tony, we can wrap with a Big Ten look here. Steve's taken us that direction. I guess I have as well. Indiana, Nebraska intrigues me.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana has basically passed Maryland, Michigan State's that level based on their ascension, but also those teams going the opposite direction. Now, this is kind of a we're even. Who's better? Who's going to show that they can possibly continue? And Nebraska is going to bring defense. Indiana is going to bring this offense. Curtis Rourke is having a great season, 74%, 14 TDs, 2 picks. But Dylan Raiola is going to have to generate some offense, and he's been pretty lousy in the times that he's needed to be good, i.e. the fourth quarter and overtime against Illinois, and then against Rutgers, since Rutgers could be playing, 4 quarters or 4 games of full football and not being a threat to reach the end zone. He didn't need it, but he was pretty bad in that game. This is going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've got it on in the background behind me, simulating. I'll just let you know right now, Nebraska 31-16 late in the third.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But clearly the Indiana offense on the video game is not up to par with the actual Indiana offense, and I think it's just fantastic that that's actually the big noon game. And if you would have said that back in August, people would have, like, what the hell is going on here? But this is going to be an opportunity for either of these teams to show that they are even more for real, even though they're going against the other. And you're still like, oh, are you for real? I think everything Indiana has done this season has been impressive. They've done what a good team should do. Now you got to defend your home turf and ride it out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Looking forward to all of the games this week. In fact, to just sit home, watch as much football as I can, fall asleep to watching football, wake up to watching football. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. Should be a good one. Should be exciting. Hopefully the weather is good and they can just throw the ball around and watch 2 good quarterbacks. And as you said, Dylan Raiola up and down, but that's life as a true freshman. Is this going to be one of those up games, or is this going to be one of those down ones?
Yeah, this week is quite a schedule. I mean, really, when you think about it, that Indiana-Nebraska game at noon, is big for the Big Ten, certainly. And then it's obviously the 2 huge SEC games are the ones that, everyone's tuning in for. Alabama and Tennessee, at 3:30, and Georgia and Texas at 7:30. I mean, that'll be 4:30 for me out here on the West Coast. But yeah, I'm going to have breakfast with the Huskers and the Hoosiers on Saturday, and looking forward to that, I suppose.
Michigan and Illinois is going to be an interesting one as well. That's one I've pointed to all season for the season as a possibility for an Illinois win. That was before we realized that everybody was lying to us at Michigan and that they couldn't throw the ball. So that's going to be a really, really ugly, hard-fought game. And in that way, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's the 100-year anniversary of Red Grange's famous galloping ghost game against Michigan.
Wow. Pretty
All
cool.
right.
They wearing any kind of alternate uniforms to celebrate?
think they're wearing leather helmets is what they're going to go with.
That'll make the Michigan fans reminiscent.
All right, folks. Maybe Michigan can have a commemorative game about 100 or 98 years from now, commemorating the Connor Stallions era.
Yeah.
Do that. Or maybe in 10 years. We have these 10-year anniversaries. We could be looking forward to that.
Yeah. Once the penalties are done, and then you can have them back.
All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here. And of course, catch Tony at Buckeye Huddle and the Buckeye Weekly podcast. It's right here on YouTube. And of course, Steve's at Bucknuts. The production level is going to be low for Steve this week. Give him a break. He's taking his, but he'll be back soon. Guys, we appreciate it as always. And we will catch you soon.
All right. Take care.